My name is Emma Shaw and I'm 28 years old. Right now, I'm standing behind my mahogany front door, watching through the security camera as 3 people I once called family sob on my doorstep like broken children. But let me take you back to where this all started, 15 years ago when I was 13 and learned that family could be your worst enemy. It was a Tuesday morning in October. I remember because Tuesday was always curling iron day for my older brother Patrick. He was 17 then, obsessed with his appearance, and had this routine where he'd spend an hour perfecting his hair before school. "Emma, get in here." My mother Nessa's voice cut through the house like a blade. I was in my room trying to finish homework I'd been too tired to complete the night before. Too tired because I'd spent 4 hours cleaning the entire house while they watched television. I walked into the bathroom where Patrick stood with his curling iron plugged in, heating up. My father Magnus sat on the toilet seat, arms crossed, wearing that expression that always made my stomach drop. The look that said someone was about to pay for something. "Your brother says you used his curling iron yesterday," my mother said, leaning against the doorframe. "You know better than to touch his things." "I didn't." "Don't lie to me." Patrick screamed, his face twisting with rage. It was moved. The cord was different. The truth was I'd never touched his stupid curling iron. I barely had time to brush my own hair, let alone style it. But in our house, truth didn't matter. What mattered was that Patrick was angry, and when Patrick was angry, someone had to pay. "Magnus, hold her," my mother said casually, like she was asking him to pass the salt. My father's hands clamped down on my shoulders before I could move. His grip was iron, pinning me in place as panic shot through my chest like lightning. "What are you doing?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Patrick lifted the curling iron, its barrel glowing orange with heat. "Teaching you a lesson about respecting other people's property." "Mom, please," I begged, turning to look at Nessa. She stood there with her arms folded, watching like this was dinner theater. "I didn't touch it, I swear on everything." "She deserves it," my mother said coldly. "Maybe next time she'll think twice before lying to us." The world slowed down. I could hear my heartbeat thundering in my ears, could smell the metallic scent of the heating iron, could feel my father's fingers digging into my collarbone. This couldn't be real. Parents don't do this. Brothers don't do this. But as Patrick stepped closer, curling iron extended like a weapon, I realized with crystal clarity that my family absolutely would do this. "Please," I whispered one more time. Patrick smiled. Actually smiled. "This is going to hurt me more than it hurts you," he said, mocking the old parental saying. Then he pressed the scalding barrel against my left cheek. The pain was beyond description, like lightning made of fire, boring through my skin and into my soul. I screamed until my throat felt raw, thrashing against my father's grip, but he held me steady as Patrick counted to 10. When it was over, I collapsed. The burn was a perfect circle about the size of a quarter, branded into my cheek like I was livestock. For 3 days I couldn't eat solid food. The pain was constant, throbbing, a reminder with every breath that my own family had mutilated me. They told everyone at school I'd had an accident. "Clumsy Emma," my mother would say with a laugh when teachers asked. "Always getting into something." But Mrs. Peterson, my English teacher, pulled me aside on the 4th day. "Honey," she said gently, "burns from curling irons don't usually look like that. They're not usually so precise." I wanted to tell her everything. The words sat in my throat like stones, heavy and desperate to spill out. But what would happen if I did? Where would I go? Foster care? I'd heard the horror stories. I was being stupid, I lied. Trying to curl my hair too fast. Mrs. Peterson studied my face for a long moment. Then she handed me a piece of paper with a phone number on it. "If you ever need to talk to someone," she said. "About anything." I kept that paper hidden in my textbook for months. At home the dynamic shifted. Magnus would catch my eye across the dinner table and smirk. Patrick would run his fingers along his curling iron when I walked past his room. And my mother? She acted like nothing had happened, which somehow made it worse. "Pass the potatoes, Emma," she'd say sweetly, as if she hadn't watched her daughter get branded 3 feet away from her. That's when I realized something crucial. They weren't my family anymore. They were predators and I was prey. After the burning, everything changed. I became invisible in my own house, which was exactly what I needed to start planning. I threw myself into school with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Every A+ was a step away from them. Every academic achievement was armor against their cruelty. My guidance counselor, Mr. Hayes, noticed immediately. "Emma, you've gone from B's and C's to straight A's overnight," he said during a meeting in November. "What changed?" "I realized education is the only way out," I told him, and it was the truest thing I'd ever said. He helped me apply for academic scholarships, taught me about college applications, even bought me SAT prep books with his own money. Mr. Hayes became the father figure I'd never had, believing in me when my own parents saw me as target practice. At home, the abuse escalated in smaller, more psychological ways. They'd forget to buy groceries, leaving me to figure out my own meals. They'd throw away my homework, forcing me to redo assignments. They'd blast music when I tried to study, then mock me for falling grades, until I started doing all my work at the public library. "Look at Miss Perfect," Patrick would sneer when I came home with honor roll certificates. "Think you're better than us?" "I know I am," I wanted to say. But I'd learned silence was survival. The scar on my face became my reminder. Every morning in the mirror, I'd trace the raised pink circle with my fingertip and make myself a promise. This ends with me. This cycle dies with me. By junior year, I had a 4.2 GPA and universities sending recruitment letters. The acceptance letter arrived on a gray March morning. Full ride to Howard University. Tuition, room, board, everything covered. I held that letter in my hands like it was made of pure gold because in a way it was. I'd been accepted to study business administration with a minor in real estate development. While my classmates worried about prom themes and senior pranks, I was planning my escape route down to the last detail. "What's that?" Magnus asked, snatching the letter from my hands before I could hide it. His expression changed as he read. Then he started laughing, a cold, bitter sound that filled our cramped kitchen. "Nessa. Patrick. Come look at this," he called out. "Little Miss Perfect thinks she's going to college." They gathered around the letter like vultures around carrion. My mother's face went through several emotions. Surprise, anger, then something that looked almost like fear. "Full scholarship," she said slowly. "How much is tuition there?" $48,000 a year, I said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the calculations happening behind their eyes. 48,000 times 4 years. Nearly $200,000 I was walking away with. "You're not going," Magnus said flatly. "What?" "You heard me. You're needed here. Your mother's been talking about opening a daycare and will need help with the children." My heart stopped. I already accepted. The deadline passed yesterday. Patrick stepped closer and I saw that familiar gleam in his eyes, the same look he'd had with the curling iron. "Then you better call them back and decline." That night, I lay in bed staring at my acceptance letter until the words blurred together. They thought they could trap me here forever, turn me into their personal servant and punching bag. They were wrong. I waited until the last possible moment, 3 days before graduation. I'd been secretly working at a grocery store after school, saving every penny in a bank account they didn't know about. Mr. Hayes had helped me set it up, understanding without me having to explain why I needed financial independence. "I'm leaving for college orientation next week," I announced at dinner, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The explosion was immediate. "Like hell you are," Magnus roared, standing so fast his chair toppled backward. "You live under my roof, you follow my rules. And my rule is you're not going anywhere," Nessa added, her voice dripping with venom. "Ungrateful little bitch. After everything we've done for you." Patrick just smiled. "Dad, maybe we need to give her another reminder about family loyalty." But I was ready this time. I pulled out my phone and held it up, finger hovering over the record button. "Go ahead," I said calmly. "But this time it'll be on video. And it'll be sent to every social media platform, every news station, and every police department in the state before you can blink." The room went dead silent. "You think you're smart?" Nessa hissed. "You think you're better than us? Fine. Go. But don't come crawling back when the real world chews you up and spits you out." "I won't," I promised. That night, I packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases. As I left the next morning, Magnus called out from his recliner, "You'll be back within a month," begging for forgiveness. I turned around one last time, looking at the 3 people who'd made my childhood a nightmare. "Watch me," I said and walked out forever. College wasn't just education, it was transformation. Away from their toxicity, I flourished like a plant finally getting sunlight. I studied relentlessly, networked aggressively, and discovered I had a natural talent for business strategy and real estate analysis. During my sophomore year, I started a small tutoring business. By junior year, I was managing social media for local businesses. By senior year, I was flipping my first property. A small house I bought with student loans and renovated with YouTube tutorials and sheer determination. The profit from that first flip became seed money for my next investment. Then another. Then another. I graduated summa cum laude with job offers from 3 major real estate firms. But I'd tasted independence and there was no going back to working for someone else. Within 2 years of graduation, I owned 6 rental properties and had launched Show Real Estate Development. By 25, I was worth $2 million. By 27, I'd hit 8 figures. The scar on my face had faded to a thin white line, barely visible unless you knew where to look. But I never covered it with makeup. It reminded me why I could never stop moving forward, never stop building my fortress of success. During all those years, I heard nothing from my family. Not a birthday call, not a graduation congratulation, not even a Christmas card. I assumed they'd written me off as permanently as I'd written them off. I was wrong. The first sign something had changed came through my assistant, Patricia, on a cold February morning. "Miss Shaw, there's a man on line 2 claiming to be your father. Should I take a message?" My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. "Tell him I'm busy," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. But Magnus called back every day for a week. Then Patrick started calling. Then Nessa. My assistant fielded them all with professional politeness while I tried to figure out what they wanted after 15 years of silence. The answer came through my private investigator, a woman named Rebecca who I'd hired to do background checks on potential business partners. I'd asked her to look into my family as well, just to satisfy my curiosity. What she found was beautiful in its poetic justice. "Your father lost his job at the factory 3 years ago," Rebecca reported, sliding a manila folder across my desk. "He's been unemployed since. Your mother's daycare never materialized. Turns out she couldn't get licensing due to some complaints filed against her by neighbors about noise and safety violations." I flipped through the documents, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. "Your brother Patrick," she continued, "has been in and out of jail for assault charges. Lost his last job 6 months ago. The family lost their house to foreclosure in December. They're currently living in a 1-bedroom apartment downtown, behind on rent." The irony was almost too perfect. The people who'd burned me for supposedly touching a curling iron had lost everything while I'd built an empire. "There's more," Rebecca said. "They've been telling people around the neighborhood that you're their successful daughter who made it big. Apparently they're proud of you now." I laughed. A sound with no humor in it. How convenient. That afternoon, Patrick showed up at my office building. He looked older, worn down, nothing like the arrogant teenager who'd branded my face. Security called up to ask if I wanted to see him. "Send him up," I said. Patrick walked into my corner office like he was stepping into a church. Hushed, reverent, overwhelmed. His eyes took in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the imported furniture, the view of the city skyline. "Damn Z," he said, using the childhood nickname he'd weaponized for years. "You really made it." I didn't invite him to sit. "What do you want, Patrick?" "Look, I know things were complicated when we were kids," he began, his hands fidgeting with his baseball cap. "But we're family. And family sticks together, right?" "Complicated." I repeated the word slowly like I was tasting something bitter. "Is that what you call holding me down while you burned my face?" His face flushed. "That was a long time ago. We were just kids. Kids do stupid things. Kids pull pranks. Kids break each other's toys. Kids don't commit felony assault with a weapon. Come on, Z. You can't still be mad about that. Look at you now. You're successful, beautiful, powerful. Maybe it made you stronger, you know?" The audacity was breathtaking. I stood up slowly, walking around my desk until I was close enough to see the desperation in his eyes. "Let me guess," I said softly. "You need money." His shoulders sagged in defeat. "The family's going through a rough patch. Dad's been out of work, Mom's having health issues, and I've had some legal troubles. We heard about your success and we thought. You thought you could cash in on the sister you tortured. We raised you," he exploded, showing flashes of the old Patrick. We put a roof over your head, food in your belly. You owe us. I pressed the intercom button. Security, please escort Mr. Patrick Shaw from the building. He's no longer welcome here. As security appeared, Patrick's desperation turned ugly. You think you're better than us now? You ungrateful bitch. We made you who you are. Yes, I said calmly. You did. After Patrick's visit, they escalated. Magnus showed up at my house. Somehow they'd found my address. Nessa started calling my business partners, trying to convince them I was mentally unstable and had abandoned my family in their time of need. They began spreading stories around their old neighborhood, painting themselves as loving parents whose cruel daughter had cut them off over childhood disagreements. They set up a GoFundMe called Help a Family Reunite, complete with old photos of us together and sob stories about their struggles. The final straw came when they contacted my biggest client, threatening to expose the truth about my character unless I helped them financially. That's when I decided to tell my story. I hired a publicist and a documentary crew. If they wanted to make this public, I'd give them public in a way they'd never expected. The documentary was called Branded, a story of survival. I told everything: the abuse, the burning, the years of psychological torture, my escape to college. I included medical records of my burn, testimonies from teachers who'd suspected abuse, and most damning of all, a recording I'd made during Patrick's visit to my office. I'd been recording our conversation the entire time. The documentary went viral within hours of its release. #BrandedByFamily started trending. Journalists picked up the story. Child advocates used it as an example of how abuse can hide in plain sight. My family's GoFundMe was shut down within 24 hours. Their landlord, who'd seen the documentary, evicted them for bringing negative attention to his building. Within a week, they were homeless. And that's when they showed up at my gates. The security footage showed them arriving in Patrick's beat-up Honda, the same car he'd driven in high school. They looked smaller somehow, deflated like balloons losing air. Magnus walked up to my intercom first, pressing the button with a shaking finger. "Emma, baby, it's your dad. We need to talk." I watched from my living room, sipping wine from a crystal glass that cost more than their monthly rent. For 15 years I'd imagined this moment. What I'd say, how I'd feel, what justice would look like. Now that it was here, I felt nothing. Complete. "Emma, please." Nessa's voice came through the speaker, cracked and desperate. "We're sorry. We were wrong. We just need somewhere to stay for a few days while we figure things out." Patrick took the microphone next. "Z, I know I messed up. I was young and stupid. But look what you've accomplished. You're amazing. You're successful. Maybe it all worked out for the best. Still trying to make the abuse my fault. Still trying to take credit for my success." I pressed the intercom button. "I need you to listen very carefully," I said, my voice calm and clear. "You are not my family. Family doesn't torture children. Family doesn't brand each other like cattle. Family doesn't watch their daughter get mutilated and call it deserved. Emma, please. I'm not finished. You taught me that blood means nothing. You taught me that family is chosen, not born. You taught me that some people are simply evil and the only way to deal with evil is to cut it out completely." Silence from the intercom. "Thank you for those lessons. Now get off my property." They didn't leave. Instead, they set up camp on the public sidewalk outside my gates, creating a scene for the growing crowd of reporters and social media influencers who'd started gathering after the documentary's release. For 3 days, they held signs reading "Forgive Use" and "Family Forever." They gave interviews to anyone with a camera, spinning tales of redemption and forgiveness, claiming they'd learned from their mistakes and just wanted a chance to make things right. The public was divided. Some people bought their redemption narrative. Others saw through it completely. On the third night, as rain soaked through their cardboard signs and inadequate clothing, Magnus made one final desperate play. He pressed the intercom at 2 a.m., his voice broken and shivering. "Emma, I'm dying," he lied. "Cancer. The doctors say I have weeks left. All I want is to apologize to my baby girl before I go. Please. I'm begging you." I turned on my exterior cameras and floodlights, illuminating the pathetic scene for the world to see. Then I activated my outdoor speakers. "Magnus Shaw," my voice echoed across the courtyard. "You don't have cancer. You have consequences. How do you I had my private investigator run a full medical background check on all of you. Your last doctor's visit was 3 months ago for a routine checkup. Clean bill of health." The gathered crowd murmured in surprise. Even in the dark, I could see people pulling out their phones to record. "But since you want to play the dying father card," I continued, "let me share something with everyone listening." I played the audio. The audio was from 15 years ago. A recording I'd made on an old cassette player the day after they burned me. 13-year-old me, voice shaking with pain and fear, describing exactly what had happened. My dad held me down. My younger voice echoed through the speakers, small and broken but crystal clear. "Patrick burned me with his curling iron. My mom watched and said I deserved it. The burn is still bleeding and they won't let me see a doctor. They said if I tell anyone they'll do it again but worse." The crowd fell silent. In that recording, I'd also described previous abuse. The times Patrick had choked me until I passed out. The times Magnus had punched me for talking back. The times Nessa had locked me outside in winter clothing for hours as punishment. "I kept this recording all these years," I announced, "because I knew someday someone would try to rewrite history. Well, here's the truth in my own words, spoken when the wounds were still fresh." Magnus' face went white as snow. Patrick looked like he wanted to run. Nessa actually tried to, pushing through the crowd, but reporters followed her with cameras and microphones. "So here's my final statement," I said, my voice carrying over the chaos. "I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. I forgive you and I'm done with you. I wish you well in your lives, far away from mine." The police arrived 20 minutes later to disperse the crowd. My family left without another word, climbing into Patrick's car and driving away into the night. I never saw them again. 3 months later, I established the Shaw Foundation for Abused Children, a nonprofit that provides scholarships and support services for kids escaping toxic families. The foundation's logo is a perfect circle, a reminder that some scars become symbols of strength. Today, 5 years later, I'm worth $53 million. I'm married to a kind man who kisses my scar every morning and tells me it makes me more beautiful, not less. We're expecting our first child, a daughter we'll raise with love, patience, and unconditional acceptance. Sometimes I wonder if my biological family ever thinks about that night at my gates. If they realize that the little girl they burned grew up to become everything they could never be: successful, happy, and free. But mostly I don't think about them at all. Because that's the best revenge of all, becoming so genuinely happy that your abusers become irrelevant. My name is Emma Shaw. I'm 33 years old. And I'm exactly where I belong. So here's my question for you. Was Emma a hero for standing their ground, or did she go too far? I'm genuinely curious what you think. Let me know in the comments below. And hey, if you're hooked on stories about people finally finding their backbone, subscribe and ring that bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.